Going live. All right, we are on air. It is Thursday, April 28th. Happy Backdrop Thursday, everyone. Today we're starting off with a design meeting where we're going to review tasks that need designer focus for Backdrop CMS, starting with our website, backdropcms.org. We are currently working on a new showcase section of the site where people can post websites that they've built with Backdrop CMS and credit themselves, their companies, anyone who has contributed to the Backdrop project along the way. We currently have a list of content buckets, so these will match the fields for the content type for showcase that we're building. And so Goldmantics has agreed to start building out that content type for us, which is fantastic, but we don't yet know what it's going to look like. So we should start thinking about a design for the showcase section of the site. There are a couple of links to example sites that do showcases like WordPress and Drupal and sorry. And we can use those as examples if we want. I think the biggest challenge with trying to find a way to do a showcase is to figure out how to show mobile versions of screens which are like super long and skinny versus desktop versions which are super wide and fat in some kind of a carousel. Darius, you've probably run into this before, but that's the thing that like makes my brain hurt in terms of trying to figure out how to make it look pretty. So that's next on our list.
The C word?
Some kind of carousel. So that's your C word. All right, so other than that, we have two other pages that are needing design. The layouts, find layouts page, and I think we currently have a design for the find theme page. We haven't implemented. We need to do that, and then we can kind of pull from the design, the find a theme page and the find a module page and see if there are elements there that would work for our find layouts page. But that's kind of where we're at right now. Also, layout project pages. We have designs for theme project pages and module project pages, so same kind of thing. We just need to kind of figure out what we want to put where and put it together. I apologize for the design meeting information not being tweeted. I don't know why that didn't go out. Usually we auto-schedule tweets, but it could have been that it was overlooked on the scheduling, or it could have also been tweeted from the wrong account. Sometimes I get that wrong. So if you guys were hoping to find it on Twitter and you didn't, it's probably my fault, and I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm glad you guys who are here actually came. All right. So the designs we currently need for backdropcms.org are the showcase section, the find a layout page, and the layout project page, although layouts and layouts projects can be derived from modules and themes. Design review, and this is probably something we could get input from anyone on. So this, we need the news section, which is at /news. It has a blog listing in the left-hand column. It has videos and tweets in the right-hand column and a list of events. Just kind of making sure that we're not doing anything on those pages that go against the aesthetic of the rest of the site, or if there's anything else that could be improved, we could use a review there. Also, with the news page itself, it's just kind of a list right now that could be dressed up a little bit or added a sidebar or whatever. So if anyone has any inspiration for that page, that could be great. And then service provider listing, which we added last week, currently just lists anyone who wants to provide backdrop services. We are going to be adding filters on there, so if you want to search by geographic region or specific area or focus, we'll add those, and as that page starts to get more people, we're going to need to kind of rethink design there to make sure that it's usable for everyone who is looking for backdrop service providers. And in the sidebar of the service provider listing page, we've also added a list of contractors. So what I thought I would do is hook that up to the same filters for geographic location and area of expertise, so that if you're looking for company and then there also happens to be a person that's an expert and you can't find a company, you've got kind of another resource there too. You might consider a contractor instead. But I think over time we might also need to add a contractors page that allows you to search specifically for a contractor, so it's not just kind of mixed in with the company listing. But we can wait until that need arrives before we need to build that page. So just fun for thinking about for the future. So that's where we are with backdropcms.org. I think we've made a bunch of great progress on it recently. We sent out a newsletter last week kind of telling people about what's going on there, and after that newsletter we had a bunch of new people sign up, so that's a good sign. And I think we should continue focusing on backdropcms.org as well as being a place where our community can kind of come together and get access to the things that they need. Next on the design agenda is Backdrop marketing, and there's only one new thing on this list since last week, and that is that Nate came up with this great idea that it would be great if we could give people things to hand out in general about Backdrop. So if you're talking to someone and you want to give them some information, like a pamphlet would be ideal, but a pamphlet is hard, and so we were thinking as an interim we could do business cards, and it's something that we'd thought about for ourselves like a year or so ago, but now that we have an entire project management committee, we thought it would be great if we could give everyone on the committee a box of business cards, and we could have some information about Backdrop maybe on the back of the card or maybe on the front, depending on how the design works. And so if someone on the PMC is talking to somebody else about Backdrop, they can go, oh, here's our website, check this out. And if the card says something about what Backdrop is, then when the person who receives it looks at it later, they'll be like, oh, yeah, this is that nonprofit CMS or whatever it is that we put on the card. And that might be really useful too. So we could definitely use help in the design area with the business card. If somebody wants to take a stab at that, I created an issue in the backdropcms.org queue. It's number 228. That has like a rough outline of like information we might want on the card. Other things, we need new stickers specifically for Apple laptops to do something cute with the dragon and the apple. So if somebody wants to work on that, it's kind of a good, fun task. Low risk, high reward, perhaps. And then we also still need background images for Twitter, Facebook, social media, that kind of thing. So if somebody wants to help us with kind of branding aesthetic, that could be a fun task as well. If you're particularly interested in branding, you can check out the tag in the backdropcms.org queue for marketing. There's also a tag in that queue for design. They'll have stuff like the business cards and the stickers if you want to check that out. And then next on the list, most exciting, is Backdrop 1.4, our new release, which is scheduled for May 15th, which is just coming up here in 2 weeks, a little more than 2 weeks. And highest priority for the next release related to design are a new set of front-end layouts and a new front-end theme, which I think we have updates on both this week. Andy, I don't know if you want to start with an update on layouts, but I know you've been doing a ton of fantastic work on that. It took us a while to figure out what the heck we were even going to do for 1.4 for layouts, but I think we came to a pretty good conclusion. We're putting in a subset of the original layouts we wanted, and we have kind of a good direction based on a lot of the code that Wes had worked on in his new front-end theme, and now Andy's trying to put it together into a fix for layouts. So I don't know if either one of you wants to update on that.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I guess I will. It's kind of, still the alpha to be released, but because I still have to check it out in obviously Radix, Basics, and all the other themes besides Bartik. But yesterday and today, well, I guess maybe last night today, I went ahead and updated the Jen and Doc Wilmot's PR, which contained like Radix layouts from Bootstrap 3, possibly, and then I updated them to the Bootstrap 4 grid, which now relies on Flexbox for the page layout. And then I put in a bunch of semantic stuff and accessibility stuff in there, just so it would be, good for that market going forward. I guess, today I will put it up either as a PR so that Travis can test it, or on the classic backdrop themes testing thing. from Pantheon that we were originally using for Wes's ideas to come forth, and now that we have Wes's theme, we don't really need to select from the contrib themes or look at them. So I think I'm just going to put up dummy content with the layouts after I take care of Jen's issues in the issue queue after this meeting.
Okay. So for the changes that you made to the Bootstrap stuff, were you pulling those from Wes's changes? Are those the same, or is this something different? Because I know, Wes, you made some changes to Bootstrap 4 as well, and we should make sure that that we're on the right track there. And we should also maybe figure out how to maintain those going forward, because Bootstrap 4 is still in alpha. If we're going to be making any changes to that, I don't even know if maybe it would be better to put it in like a separate CSS file or some way that we can continue to merge in Bootstrap 4 as it develops.
I guess I'll quickly go first. I just took the SAS from the Bootstrap site and I compiled it to become the grid, because it's currently an alpha in which they don't, you can't get the CSS source code for the Flexbox grid, and I think the only CDN link is a minified alpha, so you're not really going to get much with the grid there.
Yeah, so what I have is I did the same thing you did, but when I compiled it in like a pretty expanded form, and then got it into like into our standards, so like everything was indented correctly and whatever.
Okay.
And then I also, one thing I wanted to talk about, Jen gave me some feedback. I prefaced everything in Bootstrap with L dash, and so my thinking on that is that if we have classes that shouldn't be extended or shouldn't be like touched other than using them in markup, it'd be nice if they were easy to spot, and if they all had one or two things that kind of held them together. So L probably isn't a good example, because I think it is appropriate to extend L sidebar, for example, but no one should be extending call large 3, which is like saying I want this to be 3 columns on large. Don't touch that, but leave it alone, kind of thing. And then same thing with like clearfix or element invisible, these kinds of things. I think it'd be nice long term, not 1.4 necessarily, long term, if they were easy to spot, so that it would just, I think it could reduce errors and kind of make it easier to get started. But I don't know. So that's kind of a question. Like, is that a good idea? Like, am I just adding prefixes for the sake of being a nerd?
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant about adding prefixes in the middle of the 1.0 cycle, because I think it's going to make our documentation a little crazy for 1.x. Like, I think this is the kind of thoughts we need to be having now, and we should write it all down, and then when it comes time to do Backdrop 2, we should kind of look at it and say, is it worth reorganizing the way our CSS classes are handled? But I think for now, what I would like to do is leave one L- class on every region, so that those are layout region classes. You can target them if you want or not, and you'll know when you see that you shouldn't be defining layout styles. Like, you shouldn't be like floating this, right? Because that's responsibility of the layout. But if you wanted to add like a background color to your sidebar, you can definitely do that. But for the Bootstrap classes, I think kind of the benefit of using the Bootstrap grid system is that there are going to be a bunch of people in the world who know how to write code with the Bootstrap grid system, and they're going to drop in those classes because they use them all the time and they know what they're called. And if we start changing the names so that you drop in a, call 3 wide and it doesn't work because you forgot the L dash, that's going to be kind of frustrating for new people. And we should keep the classes that people usually use with Bootstrap the same if we're going to be using Bootstrap and Backdrop, or we kind of lose the advantage of using Bootstrap and Backdrop. We kind of have our own non-grid system now in core, and I think moving to a grid system is going to be super helpful for like consistency of layouts in long terms, but I would love it if we also got the benefit of anyone who's already using this knows how to use it without needing to consult any documentation.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I sit on that.
Yeah, I want to back that up too, in that as far as learnability goes, like whenever you tell somebody, it's like, oh, we use something that pre-existed, they're all like, yay, that's great. And you're like, well, except we changed it a little bit, and then that's always like a major like WTF for a person coming in, because they're like, I heard that it's using this, but it's like, well, it is, except that we changed it, and then it's not really the same thing anymore.
Yeah, I did add order, which is a Flexbox thing, to the Bootstrap grid, and that's just so, like, I think what they want to do with Bootstrap 4, which I think is just dumb, is to use the push and pull classes, which you needed to use on float, and so basically it uses position relative to shuffle things around in a row, whereas order, you basically weight elements in the UI, and then the layout resolves it, not by order in markup, but by the weight that it's given in the order attribute, or order style. So I basically added, it's the same convention, so it's order dash breakpoint name dash what you want the order to be. So it could be order 1, order 2. I think if I haven't added it, I need to add negatives so you can weight it negative or positive.
Have you added a filed pull request with Bootstrap 4 for order?
I have not. But
I think at the very least it would be good to create an issue and talk about it, because it's probably just like their backwards compatibility where they are thinking in push and pull because that's what all Bootstrap has done before. But that doesn't mean they're not also thinking about how do we deal with this in a Flexbox-based world. And if you have, just open an issue first, whether you need a pull request or not. And if you can kind of get talking to them about what they're thinking about that, I think it'll also help us inform what we need to do in the future. I totally agree that push and pull is dumb if you have Flexbox, but it would be weird if we implemented a solution that then everyone in Backdrop learned how to deal with, and then we had to pull it out and put in Bootstrap 4's solution later. So I don't know if that's something we should put in now or not. I'm kind of on the fence about it.
So, and one thing, I don't necessarily want to use Bootstrap's grid because I think they're going to make the best choices for us, for layout, whatever. I want to use their class naming because everyone knows it. Right. And what's behind that, I'm like, maybe I'll do what they did, or maybe I'll do something that's better for us or better for whatever reason. So that, are we on the same page there?
Yeah, I think that the main benefit of using Bootstrap isn't because Bootstrap is the best grid system. It's because people know it. Okay. But that said, the more we diverge from what Bootstrap is actually doing as far as a grid system, the less people are going to know how it works.
Yep.
So I don't know. I feel like if we make it do the same thing somehow, then that's fine. But it would just be much easier if it just did what they expected it to do.
Okay. Yeah, and the other thing I was thinking, I'm trying to think about, we're supporting IE8, which definitely doesn't support Flexbox. I don't even think IE9 does. My thought was that if I do a feature detection and find that the browser doesn't support Flexbox, I just load up the float grid system lower in the cascade, so it overrides everything. So that would be graceful degradation, because it's a very small minority of people that won't support Flexbox, but it's there. but that means that order wouldn't work. And I feel okay with that. It just means that for some people the sidebar might not be on the correct side. But I don't know if I'm just like I'm probably making that decision as if I was running the website I wouldn't care, but I don't know how everyone else feels about that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if we don't include the order stuff initially, then whoever it is that builds their website, if they want to use order, they're going to have to add order, and then they're going to have to decide what happens for IE. And it kind of says, it pushes the responsibility off of us for making it work for everyone and onto the people who choose to use order. Whereas if we include order, then we need to solve the problem for everyone.
Yeah, wouldn't our layouts use order? I mean, why would we add something that we weren't using?
So, I mean, the point there is that we could use whatever Bootstrap uses, like if it's push and pull, even if that's maybe like kind of stupid for having Flexbox, because we know that that would work for everyone.
Well, kind of.
Either that, or we use order and we figure out something work for IE.
It would work if the float style sheet gets added in because they can't support Flexbox.
Yeah. Bootstrap itself says it doesn't support IE8 in version 4.
Yep.
Like, at all.
Yep. They still do have the float grid system as an alternative. It's a setting.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah.
Still there. It defaults to Flexbox.
That's interesting. That they would say in their docs that it's not supported at all, but still have a fallback.
I don't know if they set it up as a fallback, but you can decide that you want your grid system to still be based on floats, which is weird.
I do like the smart detection for the feature thing. I don't know technically how you're going to do that, but I think that if we can figure out how to make that happen, that would be fantastic.
We did it on other places already in 7 because I used Flexbox. So it was just like a one-liner jQuery thing that Nate figured out for me.
Yeah, that tiny little bit of, what is it? We took something out of Modernizer, like the one-liner to do the detection.
Well, no, I think all you did was like you tried to. I think it's .css. If the browser doesn't support the feature, it won't return correctly, and then you'll know that they don't have Flexbox or whatever, which is pretty lightweight since we already have jQuery anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so from here, Andy's doing all of this work on the layouts. Wes, you've done all of this work on the Bootstrap CSS stuff. How do we marry this together? What's the best path forward to get them?
What if we made another, when we did the, I think 1.2, we had all those theming things that are all kind of codependent. We made a special dev branch. What if we did that, and then I can start putting basis in core instead of having it be this contrib thing, and then Andy and I can function off of the same stuff.
Well, so this basis thing is kind of a separate issue, I think, than the layouts thing. We should talk about that too. But I think what we need to do is get the Bootstrap grid system style sheet somewhere into layouts, regardless of whether the theme is there or not. And so the question is, I mean, maybe this is a question for Nate too, how do we handle that? The way that Radix does it is it creates a layout project directory and puts the style sheet in the root, and then puts all of the sub layouts in that directory, and then they all reference it. And we're going to be doing that with the legacy layouts. We're going to create a directory called legacy and throw all the layouts in there. The question is, do we want to create another kind of parent directory and put the CSS in there, and then have all child directories, or do we want to just throw the Bootstrap style sheet in a module, or do we want to put it in the root core layouts directory without a subdirectory? Where do we put it is the first question. And then the second one is how do we take the work, Wes, I don't know where all of your CSS is, if it's in a single style sheet or what, but how do we take that from the theme where you've been working on it and put it in wherever it is we decide it's going to go?
Two
and have it included.
two style sheets, one for floats, one for Flexbox.
Okay, that sounds good. Any thoughts, Nate, on where those files should live?
Yeah. So in the issue, I said that we should just be able to use the existing style sheets key in the .info file and just point at the CSS file, which works for Radix as a contrib layout because it puts them all in a directory and then says one directory out, but uses a relative path to point at the CSS file for Radix, which is Bootstrap, of course. But if we do that for core, it doesn't quite solve our problems in that we want to make it so that adding a bootstrapped-based layout in a contrib or custom layout should be like the easiest thing possible. You shouldn't need a CSS file. You should just add a template with the right classes, and then there you go, right? But the trouble is that if we just use the style sheets key as a layout, you can't know where your layout is installed, whether it's in a multi-site or whether it's in the layouts directory or what. So using a relative path doesn't work if you're a contrib or custom layout, essentially.
So an idea I had about that was if we included the Radix grid system by default for all layouts, and then would give layouts some way to opt out of having that style sheet included. So if all core layouts use the same CSS, and we have a lot of them, then it kind of makes a little more sense because it's less code to include it globally than specifically. But then we do need a way that contrib layouts who don't want the grid system can say no. And so there are a couple of ideas. Like I recommended setting some crazy new flag in the info file, which Nate, I know you didn't like. But another thought is if we added a utility like Drupal 8 has this option to exclude style sheets that works in modules, themes, and layouts. If we did that same kind of utility for Backdraft, it would be a developer experience win for anyone who's working in the theme layer. And we could use that same feature in layouts to say, like remove grid system style sheet. And then they would be able to remove it if they didn't want it and add whatever one they wanted using the style sheets key that's already there.
Yeah, I'm still not real keen on just adding it blindly all the time. It just seems like, it's more stuff that you need to get rid of. Rather than saying, this is what I want, you need to actually start getting rid of stuff.
But I do think that long term, like this is kind of like CK Editor, where if we put something in core, people will use it. There will be less and less of a use case for removing the core grid system. I mean, we don't know that now because we haven't done it yet. But in theory, people will just start using Bootstrap and stop using other grid systems.
Well, I would like it if people started using the same classes for a grid system if it's 12 columns and, whatever. If it basically maps to Bootstrap's grid, let's just all agree on the class naming.
Yeah. Well, what will happen eventually, like with 100% certainty, is that a new version of Bootstrap or a new grid system will become dominant or the most popular or more popular than version 4 of Bootstrap. And eventually we're going to have to do this again. And we're going to need to make another set of layouts deprecate or hide all of the current ones, and then add a whole new set of layouts that is like, now these are the default core layouts, because trends change, right? And so it's nice that we're setting ourselves up that we can hide the current layouts, replace them with new ones, and then on new sites they'll get the new layouts, and on old sites they'll continue seeing the old ones, and that's fine, right? And that's great that we're preparing ourselves for that, but I think that we should also anticipate, we're going to have to replace this with something else eventually, and that if we have something like a particular CSS file name or something like that you need to disable or hide, it's not going to work on the next one.
So the way the class naming works, I feel like there would have to be something as game-changing as responsive design happening again, where, because like it's pretty general. It's just like, this is a column, it's this wide, and it becomes this wide at this breakpoint. Like I don't know. I mean, you're right. Eventually it will. I just feel like it won't be coming soon. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I also wonder if it's that okay, so the reason I was recommending like a random flag in your info file is that it's not tied to the name of that style sheet you're including or excluding. You could just say like grid system off, grid system on, or whatever, and then it wouldn't matter what we're including automatically because we could change it and it doesn't change the API. It doesn't affect the API at all. If we did add a feature like manually add and remove style sheets, that also doesn't have anything to do with which style sheet we're adding and removing because you can use it on anything. So it's just a matter of like look at your code, decide what you want, what you don't want, turn it on, turn it off. I think it's a good idea anyway. But it would mean that anyone who had a contrib theme that specifically disabled, in specifically disabled Bootstrap 4, if we changed that, they would need to update that line in their contrib to disable Bootstrap 5 or Omega or whatever we move to in the future. And that would be an API change. So we would have to do that at a major version, not a minor version. But I also think like if we're going to switch grid systems, that would have to happen at a major version, and that might be okay. I don't know. I feel like either of those solutions I'd be fine with, like making people remove a style sheet or using a toggle. Nate, do you have a recommendation for another solution that would allow us to add a style sheet to all the layouts rather than having to remove it?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost obvious, but it's a lot of work. I'm not sure about it. Is that you could have base layouts, like base themes. And you could just say, this is the base layout, use Bootstrap, and then that would load the defaults, which I assume mostly it would use the preprocess functions of the base layout and the CSS files of the base layout and the template of the base layout, but of course you would be likely to override that, right?
So could we do that, like, how right now we already do that with layout.tpl.php being provided by the layout module or wherever it comes from. Could we do that same thing? Like if we made all of core layouts dependent on a base layout, we can move that template and add the style sheet all there? Or how does that work with?
Well, I mean, the layout tpl.php file that is in core is just because layouts don't have the ability to have a hook theme. They don't have any hooks at all, right? And so a module owns the base layout just because it needs to register it in hook theme. That's the only real reason. Yeah. So
then the base layout would just live in the core layouts directory, and then every other layout would inherit from base, or whatever we call it. Well, and that would include the style sheet, but not the template file. Or would it include the one column?
It would include the template file if it didn't specify a different one.
What is that? How does that deal with regions?
Well, the regions are in the template, right? Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right now, though, the thing you can't alter about a layout is its regions, right? Like you can override its template file and its style sheet in your theme, but you can't change its regions. So how would that work for like having a base layout?
Yeah, I guess in that sense it wouldn't make much sense for it to inherit the layout or the regions unless you didn't do either, right? Inherit the template or the regions. But you could. I mean, just not have any, I guess, but I'm not quite sure what value you would, because you would end up with the exact same markup. And in this case, because they're all Bootstrap-based class names, you just end up with exactly the same layout.
What if we had, it might be like way too much work, but if we defined a library and then that might happen to be a Bootstrap grid system or whatever, and then you could include libraries in your info file somehow. Mm-hmm. So there's hook library, right? That's around. I don't know how useful it is for something like that, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Instead of style sheets, it would be libraries. That's a great idea, actually. I like that a lot more. That's a lot easier.
And wait, do we already have that, right? So that would just be changed to all our info files.
I don't think you can do libraries in your info file right now.
Yeah, You don't have that. You can define a library in PHP.
Right.
Yeah, but that would be so
Invoke
much
it.
easier to just say library square bracket equals and then bootstrap for whatever, and then just have that, and then that would be it. I like that a lot more, and then you just wouldn't have any style sheets at all in that layout. It would just be the bootstrap library.
Is that going to be weird for layout developers to have to understand libraries?
No, because they'll just copy and paste it. I mean, that's what everybody does for info files anyway.
Yep. But yeah, it had to be predefined somewhere else, right? Like the grid system would be installed as a module or something.
I think we could just include it as part of layouts module. We could define the library, hook library info in the current layout module.
And then like Radix could have Radix layout library or something.
Right.
Yeah, it makes it a little difficult for other. I mean, because layouts can't provide libraries, right? Because
Oh. But that's okay because contrib projects, they can do the relative thing.
Right. Yeah. So contrib projects can do the relative thing, or they can depend upon a module that provides a library.
Which they could also
But we can't
be the
actually
maintainer
make
of.
layouts depend on modules. Does dependencies work for layouts in the info
Nope.
file? No.
Oh no. Oh. That's awkward.
But I think short term, the libraries idea is a good one. It's less effort than base layouts and less
It's also less
confusing
change.
too. Yeah, but it definitely is more work. I mean, we don't have that ability right now, and we would probably need it.
Okay. Well, why don't okay. So I like this idea too. Adding a line to your info file that says include whatever. I think we can't just call it Bootstrap though, because we're going to have conflicts with Bootstrap like other stuff. We should call it something like Bootstrap Grid System or Bootstrap Grid 4 or whatever. I think that's a good approach. I think we should take Andy's work, and maybe, Andy, can I file a pull request against your project? Is that maybe how to, I'm trying to figure out how we can get all this together. I think we can do that. And then just move the style sheet that Andy had into the CSS directory in the layout module, define the library, update the info files, add the new, I don't know. I'll make a list. I'll have you take a look at it. I'm trying to make sure I haven't forgotten anything because I think this is getting complicated.
So,
but the question is, what do we do with Wes's?
First, before you or I file the pull request, I just want to take a look at what is existing in all the current themes now. I haven't even seen any other themes besides Bartik. So before I just say here's the pull request, first I just want to
Yeah, I mean, so I think what I'm trying to figure out though is how we can collaborate if you're the only one that has the code that makes it harder.
Yeah, but
so if I can file a pull request against your repository, that might be the way to do it, rather than having us file pull requests against Backdraft. Or we could do the branch thing like Wes recommended earlier too.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to put basis and the layout changes on the same branch is because I'm overwriting.
We could test them together.
Yeah, that, and I'm overwriting all the core layouts to have those classes to make my design work. Because core layouts out of the box, the TPL doesn't work for what I need.
Okay, that might not be necessary for one. I don't know. Maybe it is. But I was thinking, like, for 1.4, if we deprecate all those core layouts, nobody's going to use them anyway. They won't see them in the UI. They'd only get the new layouts.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Right.
So we would just update the standard install profile for basic and one column, or what is it, sidebar, whatever those two layouts are that come pre-installed. We just use the grid system ones instead of the old ones.
That makes sense. I'll need to get my grubby hands on those as soon as possible, then,
Yeah.
so I can start theming against the default experience and make sure that everything looks right.
So what
It
do you
should be
think?
fine.
Should we do a new branch for that?
So a new branch won't help a whole lot because I'll still need to do all the merging. Which
Okay, so maybe we should just work on Andy's repository then. So Andy, if you want to add Wes and I to that project, that might be a good way we can work on it together.
yeah, that would be a lot better.
Okay, let's do that then.
You're not gonna file it as a PR then, or something.
Yeah, we'll figure out how to do that when we're ready.
Maybe take a look at the existing issues.
Okay.
We should make a backdrop dorks group and or something. Have some other organization.
Dragon Dorks.
Dragon Dorks.
Okay. I think that sounds like we have a pretty good path forward for layout. Wes, I don't know if you want to give us another update on theme. We've been kind of talking about it all mixed in together, but
yeah, I wrote those docs which you commented on, and I will change them so that they are bootstrappy. But I think it's important to kind of talk about how Bootstrap plays into Backdrop, because Bootstrap doesn't think about CMS stuff because it's only worried about itself. So it'll simplify what I'm doing for sure.
And did you see the docs that Andy wrote up too for how?
Oh, no.
I would just say check that out. I mean, it's kind of the same thing, but he was also talking about like standards for layout names and stuff, which I thought might be useful.
Yes,
definitely.
definitely.
We can get those things together.
I would love that. That's awesome.
Okay.
Cool. What
I
else?
need to update that a little bit with what I went ahead with, like not using underscores, but it really works. Like using Radix now, like one layout has theme name or region names top and sidebar. The other one is content and column or something. Nothing works. Nothing works together, right, in Radix, but now they do. Like when you change layouts, you keep all the existing blocks and their placements.
Nice.
From even if you're going to do ZERP layouts or something, you would still have the same saving of blocks. So that would be a nice upgrade.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking about in relation to standard class naming, it'd be nice if, well, maybe, I don't know if this is practical, but having utility classes around, like, this is a primary region, this is a secondary region, so a theme can just say, I want secondary regions, like a sidebar, to have this background color, and not necessarily have to know what it is. And like another thing, this is an old thread, and it's not like a 1.4 thing for sure, was like having, if we have classes that you can add to regions, allowing themes to specify classes that a user can pick from. So like the theme could provide. Yeah, the theme could provide things like make this the sidebar background color, or like you name things so that the user who doesn't know any CSS can do that. Let's see what else. So then I just there was an issue with the layout in the header region in Basis theme, which won't go away. It's basically how I was laying out the header block, the system header block. So I need to fix that, and there's some changes that I'm testing out in Basis that I think I'm just going to move into Core. For example, making the contextual modules gear in the top left corner will avoid a lot of layout issues where it's in a weird place that you can't hover over just because of how things lay out, and if it's display block, it could be hiding behind another element or something. The top left corner, I think, is more reliable than the top right corner is being in a place where you'll actually be able to hover over the gear. So I'd like to push that up and have people test it. I also made the hit areas on it on that drop down bigger for big fat fingers and whatever. And I need to do print CSS and some other stuff too. But yeah, it's starting to feel like it's ready for beta. I just have some stuff to do, and we'll be good.
Great.
Oh, who should handle? I can do it still, but I was planning on doing it. But the if Flexbox isn't around, we load the float style sheet.
Yeah, let's just get our hands on Andy's project, and we can do it all in there. It's just kind of a clone of core, so we can put whatever we want wherever we want, and
Cool.
we'll figure out how many pull requests to create against core from that. I have a feeling we'll probably need them to be separate, but we'll want them all to be tested together.
Yep.
So we can muck around in there as much as we want, and then figure out how to take it apart to put it into pull requests that make sense.
Okay. Cool. That was it.
Great. Let's see. So other things, there's just a handful of user experience issues that are rolled over from Backdrop 1.3. If anyone cares strongly about them, you can look in the queue for 1.4 and help us get those done. Primary among those are getting Project Browser into core, which I think is going to be a huge win for us. So that could definitely use a design and or usability review on that one. Also, if you're interested in design in general, you can check the audience design tag in the GitHub queue for anything else we're doing in Backdrop related to design. So I think we should probably go ahead and wrap this meeting, but if there's anything anyone else wants to talk about, got a couple minutes before the next meeting starts. Okay, well then we'll see most of you at 1. Thanks for joining, Darius. I know you've got a lot on your plate, so appreciate your time. All right, see everyone later.
All right, bye guys. Thanks.
Bye.